Hello, it's Drisk here, and welcome to my best game of a letter arcade edition. With this video looking at the letter A, i.e. games that begin with the letter A. Yes, this is where in this crazy oversaturated world we find ourselves in. I asked the simple question, if I could only choose 5 games per letter per system and nothing else, then what would it be? I've then ranked those games in order of preference. Now remember, this isn't what game is the most important to video game history, but simply those games that are the most fun for myself to play. It's a very personal choice and list. But my hope is it may highlight some personal gems to those drowning in fully loaded gaming lists on their retro boxes of delight, and actually encourage you to play through some of these gems. Okay, as I mentioned, this video is for the letter A on the arcade platform, and boy, was it hard to whittle down to only a choice of 5. I really could have easily filled the top 20. But choose them I have, and so without further ado, let us begin. Okay, for number 5, I had a really tough time choosing, but you know, I eventually went with Alien Storm. This was released in 1990 by Sega, and the game is really special to me. It's essentially Golden Axe meets Ghostbusters meet Alien Hunters, and it allows up to 3 simultaneous players in the US edition as you play Karen, Garth and Scooter the robot to take out the alien scum. In the game, the city has been invaded and it's up to you with your trusty blasters to clean up the city. The trouble is, many of the alien beasties have turned themselves into run-of-the-mill ordinary items such as trash cans, or even people. So they may be right underneath your noses before they reveal themselves to you. What I love with this scrolling beat-em-up game is the fun graphics and the aliens being a real nice spin-off to that Golden Axe style. I really like it being in this modern city setting. And what makes the game for me even more is the fantastic bonus levels. In these sections it switches to an Operation Wolf setting as you scroll through a shop of some description. It's here that you let rip and destroy the whole shop with soup cans or TVs exploding all around you as you take out the enemy. I remember as a kid seeing all that wanton destruction, and I found it so fun and thrilling. There's also chase sections where at top speed your character must take out the enemy, running and following behind them. This game was made by Team Shinobi, so these are the people behind Shinobi, Alter Beast, Shadow Dancer and Golden Axe. And you can see the development house has quite a pedigree. It's really nice as well that Gilius the Dwarf even marks you at the end of the game, and you'll see little references such as the Golden Axe playable characters appearing in the TVs of the electronic shop. Yes, overall this game is a huge amount of fun. It's a real shame I think it's overlooked by a lot, because to be honest, outside of the Mega Drive home port, which is actually quite good, the other home ports were pretty shockingly bad, especially on the home computers. And I think that's resulted in a lot of people just overlooking the game because they never got round to playing the superior arcade original. So give this game a go, try especially in 3 players with 2 other mates, and you won't be disappointed. Oh, by the way, did you know that if you go into the test menu and go via the service buttons, you can actually replace on the LED screen on the attract truck at the beginning from the default of Sega World, so you can put your company name or whatever you fancy. It's just a nice little touch, and I think that's really cool. Okay, let's go on to number 4. Now I've chosen Aero Fighters 2. Released in 1994 by SNK, and it really is a solid shooter. Now it's also known as Sonic Wings 2, and this Neo Geo arcade gem is a real joy, with 10 real-world locales to fly through, and an eclectic range of aeroplanes and characters, including a dolphin pilot and a rather dapper baby British pilot called Bobby, which I always play. Overall, I think this is a really fun and solid shooter and one of the easier vertical blasters to sink your teeth into. What I love is the variety of the levels and the ender level bosses being really good fun. It also has really badass power-ups as well. All this I think makes it a real all-out blastathon of a time. And thankfully this game is now available on most of the modern consoles, as well as emulating great on MAME. So there's no excuse in not playing this great little shooting gem today. It certainly has a great feeling of progression, and I think you'll enjoy. Okay, let's go on to number 3. Now, I do enjoy my scrolling beat-em-ups, and one of my favourites is Alien vs Predator. This arcade version of the game never saw a home port, and has you control either two types of predators, a warrior, like in the Predator movies, or a hunter, which is a bit more beefed up kind of version. You also have two badass Marines. There's Major Dutch Schaefer, who looks a bit like Arnold Schwarzenegger, powered up to the nines, or the kick-ass female Marine, Lieutenant Lynn Kurosawa. Now, she is by far the most deadly of the group, although she can't take a lot of hits, so you've got to be careful when using her. Now, this is the Capcom A-team working on this, taking all they'd learned from games like Final Fight, Cadillac and Dinosaurs, and placing it all on an amazing license based on the comics, which of course in turn were licensed from respective films of Predators and the Aliens films. And it gives a real nice set of levels and great playthrough with a brilliant characterizations of all the alien xenomorphs and the different kind of creatures for you to take out, always keeping you interested in the next level of the game. Yes, this game is a huge amount of fun, and it's a real shame that it never ever got a home release. Still, it runs great in MAME, and the brilliant arcade club in Bury in England always seems to have it available to play, so this is definitely one that you should look up and give a go. Right, okay, let's go on to game 2. Now for number 2, I've chosen the SNK classic Alpha Mission 2. Now, I adore this shooter series, and the 1991 sequel, in my opinion, has it all, with gorgeous graphics, fast gameplay, mega power-ups, and as addictive as hell gameplay, all set to a brilliant rocking soundtrack. As in the 1985 original Alpha Mission game, this game holds a lot of similarities to the Xevious games, with ability to fire forward or drop bombs to take out ground installations or ground enemies. It adds another level to the proceedings, and this makes it a lot of fun. Perhaps my only criticism of this game is how difficult it becomes at a few levels in, so this really isn't for the faint-hearted if you're going to try and progress through. Still, I think it's a lot of fun. It's a shooter that doesn't often get talked about, runs perfectly in MAME. You should give it a go. Right, okay, now we come to my number 1 game, and of course it's Afterburner 2, released in 1987 by Sega. Now, what can you say about this Yu Suzuki Sega classic not already been said? It's a fast 3D sprite scaling game, this time set across 21 varied and colourful stages as you take your F-14 Tomcat to take out all the enemies. It's all set to an amazing soundtrack by Hiroshi Miyauchi. Yes, he of Outrun, Power Drift, Space Harrier music fame. But to really appreciate this game, it needs to be played in the deluxe cabinet. This was the moving cabinet version. It gives you every twist and turn as you dodge the missiles and blast down the enemy planes. It really is a game all about experience. It blew my mind as a kid back in the day. I love the little other touches as well, such as the small interludes where you'll refill your weaponry between some stages. Now, Yu Suzuki gives nods to his other games here. With some of the landing strips, you first encounter the hang-on bike as someone races you, just like in the Top Gun film, and even the Outrun car gets to pull out and also give you a race as well. I think it's just lovely little touches, and of course it's a nod to that scene in the Top Gun movie. Now, for those wondering what's different in Afterburner 2 over the first, well, it's not a lot, and to be honest, I'd be very surprised if you played the first one, most people are playing the second one, because it's really a patch update as opposed to a whole new game. Both were released the same year, and the way you can tell whether you've been playing the second one or the first one is on the intro. You'll see all the balls spelling out 2 behind the Afterburner title. But what does it do? Well, it is really just a tweak. It's probably the biggest thing. It adds a throttle to allow varying speeds. It adds 3 more levels, taking you up from 18 to 21 levels. They slightly tweak the missiles, making it quicker to fire, and there's some minor musical tweaks, improving it even further. But as I say, most people would have played this Afterburner 2 actually not even realising, because all the box art would say Afterburner 1. Now, the legal way to play this these days, well, M2 did a fantastic digital on the 3DS. Afterburner appears also in Shenmue 2 in the arcade section. There's a brilliant arcade perfect port on the Sega Saturn, which is wonderful, and also the 32X port is absolutely amazing, being as good as arcade perfect. But if you're really gonna play the game, well, you've got to take a pilgrimage to the arcade club in Leeds. Now this actually has the deluxe cabinet to play on, and this really takes it to a whole new level. You just can't believe how much, as you're sort of dodging the missiles and flying against the enemies as it throws you around, what a difference it really makes, taking the game to that another level. So there are my top 5 personal choice games for the arcade platform, beginning with the letter A. I would love to hear your top 5, so please let me know in the comments. Now, I had as I mentioned at the top end of this, I had a real hard time whittling down my list. The big one, of course, is Asteroids. I appreciate how important this game is, but to be honest, the arcade version, I've always found it a little bit cumbersome with all the buttons, and I'm just not very good, and I just, no matter how hard I try, I can't get better at it. I do love, though, the Atari 7800 version of the game, but of course that's not the arcade port. Of course, another one that people will probably be thinking of is Arkanoid, or indeed its sequel, Revenge of Doe. Now this is one that, to be honest, I nearly added, but as I tried to play through it, and as I've played certainly the original in Arcade Club, I've come to realise that I actually have fonder memories of the home ports. It's usually the port on the Amiga for the original, or the Spectrum for Revenge of Doe. It's just that little bit slower and a little bit more playable. I find it's all running a little bit too fast for my poor reactions on the spinner, and I just can't get very far and get frustrated. Then there were oodles of titles very fond and special to me that on a different day I probably would have chosen over my number 4 or 5 slot. Games such as Alien Syndrome by Sega. This had you rescue the humans by shooting jelly beans, and is great fun. There's Armed Police Batrider. This is an amazing, awesome bullet hell blaster that needs to be played by more. There's also Air Duel, another frantic shooter, and of course the brilliant horizontal blaster Airbuster, which I still can't believe didn't make my top 5 lists, because I absolutely love this game. And that's even before we go to some of the other licensed games. Alien 3 Gun. Now, I still can't believe this didn't make at least number 5 on my list, because I love this version. Big solid guns, taking out the enemies. It was probably one of the best adaptations that really made you feel like a badass Marine, putting you in the action and taking some great locales. I particularly love the level 2 when you have the wind-swept, stormy planet. Of course, keeping with the Alien universe, there's also Aliens, the Konami classic, the sort of scrolling run and gun shooter. Now this is good, I do love it. but I just didn't feel it made my list because it does get a little bit samey, particularly as you go on to some of the later levels. I don't find it quite as compelling. There's also the hidden gem AB Cop. Now this is another fantastic sort of Chase HQ style of game that puts you this time on a jet bike, and it's a great response by Sega to those games. And finally, Asterix by Konami. Now I've always loved the scrolling beat 'em ups, and I particularly always love the Konami license ones, and this is one that doesn't often get talked about. Again, it never saw a home port. Now for me as a kid growing up loving the comics, every time I used to see this in the arcades I used to make a beeline for it because it was a great way of experiencing it, and they've done a great job. It is the same team who did Simpsons and Teenage Mutant Hero Turtles, and they've done it again here with great characterizations. So there's a lot of choices there that unfortunately didn't make my list, but ultimately I'm happy with the 5 that I chose. So I'd love to hear your top 5. Put it in the comments and try some of these games. I'd love to know what you think. So until next time, keep it retro.